As Russia ramps up its assault in the east, we're getting the first images of a setback for the Kremlin forces in the south. CNN's Phil Black is joining us right now. He's joining us from Kyiv. Phil, tell us about these new pictures of that Russian warship in the final moments before it sank.
Yeah, that's right, Wolf. These images appear to show the Moskva, the flagship of Russia's Black Sea fleet, on fire, badly damaged, listing with a huge column of smoke rising above, and the life rafts already deployed. Independent experts believe this is the Moskva in the final hours before it went down. They also point to dark holes in the side of the hull, which could indicate missile puncture marks. If that is confirmed, it would back up Ukraine's version of how and why that ship sunk, because Ukraine says it attacked the Moskva with 2 anti-ship missiles, creating a fire and eventually leading to the sinking. Russia still hasn't acknowledged any missile strike. It talks about a fire starting on board and then the ship eventually going down in bad weather as it was being towed back to port. Russia also has not acknowledged any casualties as a result of the sinking. But this is seen as a really significant blow to Russia's naval, but also its national prestige. And Ukraine has said it does not believe the country will be easily forgiven for carrying out this operation successfully, Wolf.
Five days after Russia admitted one of its most famous naval ships had sunk, questions remain about the fate of its hundreds of sailors. Thick smoke billowed from the ship, listing in the water before it sank to the bottom of the Black Sea. A successful Ukrainian strike with 2 missiles, Ukrainian officials said, and American officials believe that to be true. Russia's Ministry of Defense released this video of the commander of the Russian Navy meeting and reviewing surviving crew from the ship, appearing to show only around 100 of them, far short of the estimated 500 who would have been on board.
The Russian government is hiding virtually everything about the Moskva, that it was attacked by the Ukrainians, that it was attacked with missiles, and the death and casualty totals right now. So it's a real disservice to the Russian population.
The surviving sailors were brought to Crimea, where civilians laid flowers and wreaths, an apparent admission that there were indeed losses, despite Russia's initial insistence that everyone got off the ship. There will be victories, this officer said, and there will be losses. The official Russian line is there was no Ukrainian attack on the flagship of the Black Sea Fleet, but instead a fire on board which caused munitions to explode. A loss of every ship, especially a flagship, this priest said, is a tragedy. It's a humiliating loss for Russia, but a devastating one for the parents of the sailors killed, and anger is growing over the lack of answers. The father of a young conscript, a cook, writing on social media, a tragedy occurred, the truth about which we have yet to find out. Dmitry Shkrebets called the story that they're getting a lie. A blatant and cynical lie. The mother of another sailor wrote that her son is listed as missing. Parents are not told anything. All contacts are blocked, she writes. There is no information. A second mother, who says she was told that her son is dead, told the BBC she believes that dozens are still unaccounted for. And Kate, Western countries are hoping that if Russian families truly understand what's going on in Ukraine, that they will protest or put pressure on the Putin regime to end this war. Now, I saw part of that direct effort when I was in Ukraine. The Ukrainians set up a hotline for Russian families to call to find out information about their Russian soldiers, if they'd been killed, wounded, or captured. And on all of those calls, the Ukrainian officials, whether they're offering information or not, would tell those Russian relatives to speak up, to go out and protest against this war.
For the battered and desperate citizens of Mariupol, a chilling new threat has emerged. The Security Service of Ukraine, or SBU, released a purported communications intercept of a Russian ground unit commander who said Russian aircraft were planning to, quote, level everything to the ground around Azovstal.
Знаешь, какой там это будет взрыв, какой-то все будет?
Писец просто. Сказали сравнять все с землей. Да, фу, бьют их, выбивают. Они
CNN cannot vouch for the authenticity of the recording, but the SBU has previously released audio from intercepted radio traffic revealing Russian soldiers discussing killing and raping civilians, bolstering allegations of war crimes by Russian troops. Military observers have also noted a tendency of Russian troops to use unsecured communications in Ukraine. For now, a Ukrainian commander says Russian forces are, quote, willingly bombing and shelling the plant, a sprawling complex in Mariupol's southeast that once employed more than 10,000 people. It's unclear how many Ukrainian forces are at the site, but one commander says the Russians are using free-fall bombs, rockets, bunker buster bombs, and other artillery at the facility. Video posted on government social media, which CNN cannot verify, shows dozens of women and children who say they've been staying under the facility for weeks, holding out against Russian attacks. The surrender deadline Russian forces issued to Ukrainian troops has now expired, but the Russian military official in charge of the operation say they will allow the civilians safe passage out of the area.
При этом руководство России
Russian leadership will guarantee safe evacuation of each and every civilian, as well as the safety of the humanitarian convoys movement in any direction they choose.
It's unclear if the Ukrainians will take the word of the Russian general, who has himself been accused of excesses during the Mariupol campaign. Not all of Mariupol's civilians are in the steel factory. Tens of thousands are trying to survive in other parts of the city. CNN is not in Mariupol, but the Reuters news agency found these people cooking outside a residential building on Monday. They're chopping wood to make a fire, to boil water, some soup, and even cook some pancakes. This woman, cutting a boy's hair, says, quote, they need to quickly fix the water supply problem. How can we live without water? It's horrible. And this woman says of the bombardment,
to be honest, we are not well. I have mental problems after airstrikes, that's for sure. I'm really scared. When I hear a plane, I just run away.
It's been 2 weeks since these suitcases were first packed. 2 weeks since Evgeny and Ludmila escaped the hell of Mariupol to Russia, and then finally to safety in Estonia.
Before now, it was just stress. Here, we're able to really relax. I feel that we are safe here.
They lived across the hall from each other in an apartment building on the northern edge of Mariupol.
For 14 days from the beginning of the war, somehow all the shelling would all fly past us.
But their luck would soon run out. In the relentless bombardment of the city, their building was eventually hit. The damage, though, was limited enough for them to stay, even without power, water, heat, or a cell signal.
When you hear these explosions, you have an idea the direction they're coming from, and you know what you have to do: lay on the ground, run, or sit down. But silence is horrifying.
On day 38, the building was hit again. It was time to leave.
It was impossible to go further into Ukraine. We lived in a different part of the city. There were 2 encirclements around us. As I understand, if we went in that direction, well, the only way to leave was through the Russian Federation, and the only thing we were concerned with at the time was leaving this ring of fire. We didn't have a choice.
They made it to a school in Mariupol, where Russian-backed soldiers were evacuating people east to the village of Sartana. Then, a week later, so-called filtration in Bezimane, where at a site like this one, they were searched, fingerprinted, and questioned by Russian soldiers before crossing the border into Russia to the city of Taganrog, likely to the shelter shown here.
It was the first time we took a shower in over roughly 50 days, right?
41 or 40?
With the help of ordinary Russians, they made it to St. Petersburg, then on to Estonia. Their story is part of a larger trend. Most of the 200, sometimes 300 Ukrainian refugees arriving in Estonia every day are entering the country through Russia.
Most of them are coming from Mariupol after having passed the humanitarian corridor. But there are also those who say they have been deported to Russia but have managed to come here, and we accept them all.
On this day, they're catching a train to the Estonian capital after staying at a hostel run by volunteers.
Some were taken by Russians by force from Mariupol to Russia, and later they fled from camps on the territory of Russia. But others go voluntarily.
From Tallinn, they're not sure where they'll go, but they're optimistic.
We will have some difficulties along the way, but if you compare what we went through, everything will be just fine. The future must be better. We don't have another option.
This was Borodyanka before, a thriving blue-collar town of nearly 13,000 people just 36 miles from the capital of Kyiv. Playgrounds full of children, neighbors enjoying the local cafes. For the most part, a quiet and peaceful life. And then the Russians began bombing civilian targets, such as residential apartment buildings, for a full month. And now Borodyanka is a shell of its former self. Craters replace apartment buildings. An empty playground only filled with the remnants of war. Rubble where apartment buildings once stood. A dentist's office with no patients left to treat. Victims of Putin's bombing campaign against Ukrainian civilians.
The whole month we were sitting for 1 month from there and from here. It was flying from there and from here. After occupying the town since late February, the Russians did not hold back as the Ukrainian army forced them to retreat, making sure to leave their mark.
This neighborhood in Borodyanka has just been completely and utterly destroyed, from the unemployment office over there to the municipal building, the mayor's office there, the police station there. This was a memorial to Ukrainian soldiers who had fought the Russian and pro-Russian separatists in the Donbass region, which began in 2014. The memorial has been completely smashed onto the ground. In fact, the only thing still standing in this immediate area is this memorial right here, this memorial to the soldiers who died fighting in Afghanistan under the Soviets.
And now, roughly 2 weeks after the Russians withdrew after losing the Battle of Kyiv and the surrounding area, people are starting to try to clean up what they can. But what happened here at Borodyanka cannot be swept away. There's no running water or electricity. The people who stayed and those who came back are relying on donations of clothing, food, and water collected at a local church.
Yes. We pack into bags, bread, then canned food. Everything that is brought here, we pack into these bags, equally for everybody. People can choose clothing that they need.
A shed of waiting caskets serves as a reminder of what is buried under the wreckage, under the rubble that once was Borodyanka. Halina Tsapuk never left. She survived on food in her own garden. She says her sister left the apartment building just before it was bombed.
She left it at 6 a.m. and at 8 it was already bombed in the morning. It was a bombing from an aircraft. There were many airplanes flying military over our land plots.
So many others inside that building, which looked like this last summer but no longer exists, were not as lucky.
Yesterday they found the bodies of 9 people, and the day before 12. All of them hiding in the basement, all of them trying to seek shelter.
Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky has said what happened here may be worse than what happened in Bucha. So far, city officials say the death toll is 50, but every day firefighters digging through the rubble find more human remains.
The firemen just came over and dropped off this notebook that they found in the rubble of the building that used to be here. It's the deed to the building and the apartment records. The firemen just keep coming over and putting these little bits of the humanity of the people who used to live here as if they're going to come back and claim it, as if any of them survived. Look, there's a wedding photo.
Lives seemingly on pause, about to be reclaimed at any moment, but in reality, stopped forever by the savagery of Putin's war.